Well, this is Dr. Joel Hastings here at Community Bible Church. I wanted to take a short video and just address something that I saw in the news here, and maybe you already have as well. And there is rumors now that Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned. That's obviously the famous abortion rights case here in the last 50 years, making abortion legal across the United States. And so this is something that we have been praying for would be overturned for a long time. It's something that we're hoping for, and so this should be a day of rejoicing whenever that finally comes through the pipes officially as well. But we have to ask ourselves, okay, now what? We have been building to this, we've been praying for this, we've been fighting for this, but now what do we do? Because number one, if you're not aware of how the whole system works, that just because Roe versus Wade will be overturned does not mean that abortion is going to be completely done away with, but rather it's going to be thrown back on the states' laws themselves. And so for conservative states, abortion might become illegal completely, but then on liberal states, they might even try to react to that new ruling and thus come out with even more liberal laws. And so we have to know that number one, the fight is not over here. But let me also stop and say this, because I honestly don't even like the word fight in this situation, because for me, it's not actually a fight, because I know for many of the people in our church, if the statistics hold true, actually 1 out of 4 women in our churches here in America actually have had an abortion. And so anytime this hits the news, anytime that there's this conversation comes up or I talk about it in church, obviously there's a lot of women that are feeling very grief-stricken, feeling shame, feeling guilt, and this isn't me putting this on them, this is words that they have told me. And so number one, if that is you, and this might be a difficult few days because it's going to be in the news and people are going to be arguing and all of that. But let me just remind you of what happened in John chapter 8. You might remember that story of the woman that was caught in adultery. Now, she had done something wrong. She had sinned. And so the people then grabbed her and took her to the feet of Jesus and threw her down at the feet of Jesus, hoping and waiting for him to condemn her, to send her to death, be ready to stone her. But do you remember what happened? It first said that Jesus wrote things down in the sand. We don't know what that was. But then he says, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And it says, then starting with the oldest, they started to drop their stones and they walked away. Now, in reality, when Jesus said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, that could have been Jesus, couldn't it have been? If anyone was able to condemn her, it would have been Jesus. But he did not take that opportunity to condemn her, but rather he tells her, he looks at her and says, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And so if this is part of your story here, where you face this or some other issue that you have guilt and shame over, just know that when you find yourself at the feet of Jesus, however you find yourself there, that he can look at you in the eyes and confidently say, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And so if that is your story, I pray that you find forgiveness at the feet of Jesus. You can always take it to him and you can find that peace that you are looking for. But let me also address this, because in the next few weeks, I imagine that people might address questions to Christians about, why are you even pro-life? Don't you care about women's rights? Don't you care about women having control over their own bodies and things like that we often hear those arguments of? And number one, now I'd say, yes, I do actually want women to have control over their bodies. But I would argue, and I believe the medical science argues, that the child is not actually her body. That's a different body altogether. It has different DNA. It has a different heart. It has a different brain. It has different legs and hands. It is a complete, so even though it's in her body, yes, it is a separate person. A separate person. It doesn't take long for us to even find out. If you want to do the research, I encourage you to, but you will find out that within a few weeks, within the first 6 weeks, there's already brainwave activity. By week 7, the heart is almost completely formed. You're going to have all sorts of the limbs starting to be formed. Like, you can tell what this child is becoming. This child is becoming a fully developed human. And so even though the child isn't fully developed in this moment, it doesn't make it any less human. Just like a 2-year-old child isn't even less human than I am just because he's smaller, she's smaller, or it hasn't fully developed in all of their body functions yet. doesn't make a 2-year-old child any less valuable or less human, and neither does it mean if the child is only 2 months old. It's simply a different stage of development for a human. And so, number one, we are pro-life here at Community Bible Church because the medical science supports it. But then also, and primarily the reason that we are pro-life is because the Bible also teaches it. Psalms 139, a very famous passage, says, "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's wombs. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed substance. And the books were written, every one of them, in the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them." Means that while you were still in your mother's stomach, God was in there forming you, building you, making you, establishing how long you are going to live. That God is caring about those children that are in the womb still. And so we are pro-life because the Bible teaches us to be pro-life. But then now we have to ask ourselves, okay, so now what do we do? What do we do? Because Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned, it seems like. And because of that, there might be more children that are not aborted, but actually are given the chance to live. And so that means that as Christians, we need to be willing to step up and be the hands and feet of Jesus. And that might be a sacrifice. It probably will, but that's what Jesus did for us as well, to help those whenever we were unable to help ourselves. And so the book of James famously says in James chapter 1 that the religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their afflictions, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. This is what religion is all about, to care for those that are needy, to care for the orphans. And so a few ways that you can practically get involved here is, number one, if you are feeling led to adopt, then adopt, or foster care, then do foster care. But I know that that's not going to be possible for every single one of us, but there is still ways for you to get involved. So number one, here at our church, we do have, throughout the year, we'll have what's called Embrace Grace groups, where we actually help those young women who find themselves single and pregnant, and we help support them. We throw them baby showers, we take them through a book, we help train them also to be good mothers if they decide to keep their children, or we can help them with the adoption process. And so we have those groups that you can get involved and volunteer in, as well as even on Thursday night, we're actually hosting an event for the organization For No More Orphans, and that's a way for you to learn actually how to get involved in adoption, and how to get involved in foster care, and how to get involved in all of these things here. So Thursday night at Community Bible Church, I encourage you, if you're anywhere in Hernando County, to come to that. But then also we're really involved with our Crisis Pregnancy Center here in Hernando County, New Generation. We'll be raising funds between Mother's Day and Father's Day for that, so you can help support their work. But then they're always looking for volunteers, both men and women, to help counsel and help support the ministry that is going on out there as well. And they are also a wonderful opportunity, New Generation, to help point you in the direction just to get involved as well in many different aspects of the ministry there. And so I'm just imploring you, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't just say, finally, abortion is done, we can celebrate, and not actually be willing to step into that mess, step into the sin, and say, listen, but I will help, and I will be the hands and feet of Jesus, because that is what he also did for me. So that's what I have for you guys today. Have a blessed day.